everybody, good morning. Jean here. Today I'm going to be doing a two-part tutorial on my Dresden Plate wall hanging. This is the wall hanging that I'm going to be working on. I'm going to be showing you today. You saw me, you'll have seen me make it. It's in the wintry tones with the poinsettias and the paisleys, and it's just real pretty. Looks a little bit dull actually, I think. It's photographic, but I used a sparkly thread. You'll see the up close of it. And actually I was thinking about it, this would lend itself to like an embellishment, perhaps a really pretty, like some gold beads or buttons or something really sparkly for the season. So that's what we're working on. I put my hanging sleeve on the back. I had gotten a comment from somebody saying, perhaps like a stitch witchery, like an iron-on thing. I've done that, and I hate hand sewing, but I have to say I'm going to go back and hand sew it. It's holding, but not really great. So that blew that theory out of the water. But thank you anyway for the suggestion. I think as I was saying in my comment, I think the weight of the rod. So I'm going to hand stitch that, but I just finished it up. Now you see I did this more on a vertical. I had done again, my quilt evolved. I said how much fabric in the beginning? I don't know, maybe literally half a yard, because not even, because I just did this and that. I had the fabric. So this is ending up a little bit more vertical, if you notice, than my actual sunflower. This is the one I had made a few days ago and had quilted. I quilted this in pretty much the same way, although I didn't quilt the middle as I had quilted that one. But again, you'll see oh my, something fell. But you'll see the up close. So there's my hanging that we're going to be working on with the more of a star shape of quilting. But I did want to just show you what I've also made in the past with a Dresden plate, that just shows up so very different. Now this, I used I used the same template when you'll go to see the instructions, and I rounded the edges of of the blades, and I actually just satin stitched around. As you'll be noticing, I'm showing you different, or I'm suggesting different applique methods. This was a blanket stitch. This is a satin stitch, but look how pretty that it takes on a little life of its own. Again, a little wall hanging. I put a hanging sleeve on it. I backed it with a real pretty, like a candy stripe fabric, and then I just used this 30s fabric, and I just made I just sewed, squares together and made the border of this little hanging. Again, you can see the quilting. I just quilted this. I used a feather stencil in this, and I free motion quilted it to emphasize the actual curve of this little Dresden plate. Then I wanted to show you this, and it was interesting. I made this quilt a while ago, and I went and pulled it out. And remember we made the chevron quilt? Well, look what I did. I completely forgot I had done this. I made a chevron background. Can you see that in the pale gray and white? Almost tone on tone. And then I did pops of the yellow, gray, and white for the Dresden plate. And I did these in the 2 sizes. I used that exact template, but if you can see, I actually left these blades unsewn. I just literally glued it down to my background and stitched around. And this quilting is a little bit different. I actually quilted in the blade like a loop. You can do all sorts of things. So what I did with this is I constructed the chevron, which took me, well, as you know, that was a real easy tutorial. Chevron quilts, half square triangles. I did that, and then it was a bit too low volume. It was pale. It was really, I like a bit of color, but I liked the gray and white and the pop of yellow because I'd had this pretty yellow, gray, and white border. So I just pulled yellow from my, and actually there's only about 2 different colors, or maybe 3 different colors of pale yellow in my Dresden plates. So that's an idea. You can go to town. I've made, oh, I have it there. I'll show it another time. I made a Dresden plate. Yeah, it's right behind the camera, whatever. I don't want this video to go on a million years. I made a real old-fashioned looking one. You can make Dresden plates in all sorts. Don't let it just be like one. You can make small ones. So I just want to show you this, what I've done also. This was really a bit, this was really funky. I started making, this is quite a large quilt. And as you know me, I love my rickrack, right? So I went to town with my rickrack. I just did all sorts of size Dresden plates. And then on the stem, this is two bits of rickrack sewn together. And believe it or not, that's not a striped, that's not orange and white stripe. That's orange and white jumbo rickrack braided together. I just went to town on this. This is like again I was saying, like springy colors. I made little tiny, that I just cut out. That's not a Dresden plate, but it's just a little flower thing I cut out, and I just appliqued them onto the different blocks, and then I just put the blocks together. Little, small ones, little ones, medium, large ones. So you're not, oh, and this one, you probably can't see, but this Dresden plate panel here, I actually quilted in like a spiral. I just went around from the center of the one blade up to like the other. And it just made a bit of a spiral. You can't really tell. And then I'll just echo quilting in here. And then this is just like a spiral in this one. And then I had this really pretty pale green and orange fabric. Really, really bright orange that I backed it with. But what I'm saying is, we're going to get to this tutorial here now, is you can go to town, big, small, little. You can put them on blocks. You can make just one. You can embellish them. Really a nice pattern. And even though I had to do 2 parts because I go on a bit, I'm showing you every detail. And I was thinking that I like to think we're in a bit of a classroom setting. And I do chatter on, but I hopefully, you're going to be seeing exactly where you put the needle and how you stitch. So I hope I'm not, as I said before, I hope I'm not dumbing it down too much for you. But I don't want you to be daunted. This is easy. This is real easy. As you saw, my chevron quilt was real easy. But maybe it looks a bit daunting to a beginner. So don't let it be overwhelming. This is just a few little, I've made tons of Dresden plates, and every one of them looks different. You can do a rainbow, and again, that was just scraps. Get your template though, your template, however big you want to make it. So anyway, this is part 1 of my Dresden plate tutorial. Stay tuned for part 2. I cut my videos off because these are like 25 minutes each, I think. So, so these are my Dresden plates tutorial. So I really hope you love it. Thanks. This is a PS. I did think you'd want to see this quilt that I made. This was actually one of my first quilts. I just grabbed it from over there. And this is, real quick, I had never had an heirloom given to me. My mom didn't have an awfully lot. That's why I have so much. And I always wanted an heirloom quilt, but I didn't have one. So I made one when I first started sewing. And because it was so easy, I made a Dresden plate quilt. I didn't really know what I was doing, so I didn't actually put a circle in here. I just appliqued it onto squares and made this quilt. And then I embarked, this was one of my first quilts, ridiculous, on my scalloped edge ice cream cone border. This is hard. What was I thinking? I did it and I hand sewed it. That was the beginning of the end for me. But this is one of my favorite quilts because I I created an heirloom for myself. I backed it in a real sweet little fabric. This is about, what, 11, 12 years ago, when the real soft, like the 30s prints were really in style. And there's my little heirloom. I just wanted to show you one of my favorite quilts with a Dresden plate. So have at it, folks. On to the tutorial. Now these are the items, these are the materials that we're going to be needing for our winter-themed wall hanging. Now you've seen the sunflower wall hanging, and it's pretty much basically the exact same thing. Obviously we're not making a sunflower. I'm using loosely the inspiration from this fabric here. It's a holiday themed poinsettias and burgundies and the greens and the florals of a nice winter themed fabric. So that's my base fabric, which I had just pulled this from my stash. I believe we probably just need about I would say 3/4 of a yard or something like that. I'll figure that out later. The next thing we need are, I'm pulling the flower, for lack of a better term, the flower, I'm pulling from the colors of my focus fabric. This is called the focus fabric. And to make the blades of my flower here, I have pulled my reds and my greens from my stash. Now, on the flower, I'll get to the template in a minute. On the flower, it takes 20 blades, as it were, 20 petals of the different fabrics. So you could by all means use 2 or 3 or 4 different fabrics, but I have lots and tons of fabrics, and it's basically just a scrap. So I made 10. I took 10 green in all different shades, pulling the colorways from this focus fabric. I have 10 greens, lights and darks, to try to coordinate with my fabric, and then I have 10 reds, and I'm going to be red, green all the way around my flower. The middle of my flower, again, I'm taking creative freedom because it's not going to look like a poinsettia. It's going to look like a green and red flower. Maybe I should do it all red. Nah, I like this. It'll be pretty. So the middle of my flower, I've used this fabric. I don't know if you can see it. It has holly leaves. Again, a winter-themed fabric. And what I did is I just took some round thing, some lid, and I cut that size. But what I did do, and I also did it on my sunflower, which I will have shown you, is I actually cut a piece of batting. You can't really see from the photographs, but when you're actually looking at the quilt, my center that I just applique onto the petals has a little piece of batting, and I'll show you how I address that. So this was just a lid. You can make this as big or small as you want, because you'll see how the flower is constructed. You can make that just small if you wanted, perhaps even a gold. I was thinking that, but I quite like this. I like a ton of patterns put together. I quite like that, and it is a winter-themed fabric. So that's going to go in my middle of my whatever flower it is. The most important thing, but my background fabric, before I get to my template, my background, which I'm going to be appliquing my Dresden plate onto, it's I had bought like you can't see it, it's reading white to you, but it's like an ivory with a tiny little ivory, it's a tone-on-tone leaf print. Now what I have done, as you will see, I have 2 pieces, and each piece is about 23 inches, because my flower is works up about 21 and a half inches. So I've cut about a 23-inch piece of fabric, 22 and a half inches I think it is, square, of 2 pieces of fabric. I do that. I treat this as one. I don't baste it together. You'll see how I have dressed it. I just smooth it out. I feel that this is a heavy applique. Once it's done, it has a lot of seams. It's a lot of fabric for one piece of fabric. So many people would probably disagree with me, but this wall hanging is substantial, and I feel that it hangs very well when I use the two pieces of fabric together. I just cut it off the bolt, boom, it's my background fabric, and I'll show you how I do that. So those are my fabrics, just these fabrics. This is the most important thing I wanted to show you. This is the template. You are going to need a Dresden Plate template. Now this is the one I have. You can get tons of different ones. This is called the number 2, fast to cut templates. The information on this template itself is let's see, 2009 Annelie Belden, A-N-E-L-I-E Belden, B-E-L-D-E-N. What other information? Fast to cut Dresden Plate template, www.ctpub.com. Now, I don't know if you can see, but this template here gives you all sorts of dimensions and measurements for making a small straight top, a small round top, the dotted lines, the fold lines, the medium straight top. We're just cutting our fabric out of this template here. As you can see, I've just cut out my 20 blades of fabric, and that's what makes that large flower, and you'll see how it's constructed. So you can make all different sizes of Dresden plates. You can mess about, you can curve it, which I have, but I feel this is the easiest way to do it for this very large Dresden plate block. Because it's already done. You get the point by this, and it's a finished point, and that you can applique, that I applique with my blanket stitch. It's the easiest for me, I think. So you just cut out on your Dresden plate for this large flower, you just cut out 20 different fabrics. Now I'm going to show you how I'll actually chain stitch these pieces together. It actually works up very quickly. So I'm chain piecing my 20 blades of fabric, and what I've done is, as you know, what I do is I always put my things up to the right of my machine, so I can just pull. These are all the proper sides up, the right sides up, and what I do is I just pull, and then on the top of the wide part, right sides together, I just put the ends together here, and with my presser foot comes up, my 1/4 inch seam, remember that 1/4 inch seam, I'm just lining that up to the top of my blade here, and I'm just going to chain stitch that along. You can just take your time, take another one, right sides together under your presser foot, and then in no time you will have done all 20 of your blades. And it's really, if you don't know, if you've never made a Dresden plate, it's really fun how, you know, out of a square top of fabric you get this lovely pointed flower. So I'm just coming along, even in these few seconds, 1/4 inch. I do my 20 blades. Make sure that the ends are together. Very important that you stick to your 1/4 inch seam. And you'll see why when the actual construction. A lot of people who make a Dresden plate, they're like, what? But the end. Whoops, it's gotten caught. The end is, oh well, that's, anyway. Thread ran out. The end, it might be a little bit wobbly. Doesn't lay real flat. Well, this method, guarantee you, if you sew just exactly your 1/4 inch, it absolutely will lay flat. So then, oh, yeah, something's happened. I'll just cut my pieces apart here. I just chain them apart. As I do, just chain them, just cut them apart, and then I'll take this over to the ironing board and I'll show you the miracle of this Dresden plate. Okay, I'll just finish up. I've sewn all of my blades together, and now the most important part is that you iron them to make the point. And as this happens, I've already done some here, what you do is you take your finger, your thumbnail, and I just put my finger right in there up to the top and then push that seam right to the top. It makes that lovely, lovely point. Hopefully you can see it. And then you can just eyeball where the center of this point should be. It doesn't take, you know, it's just down the center. And I actually like to push my seam underneath to where it just folds under real nice to one side, and then I just press, and then you come out with this lovely finished point. There you go. You just come out with that lovely finished point. Just grab another one. There's only 20 of them. I just put my thumb right in there, and I just push around. I take that point to the top bit, center, turn this seam to one side or the other. Make sure it's in the middle. You're pleased it's in the middle of your blade, so you end up with a nice same size point. And then a lot of people, I think, cut that off. I don't. They cut that bulk out of that point. I don't. I think it's just an extra step. But by all means, if you want to reduce the bulk up in that point, but to me it just lays. They lay ever so nicely. And oh yeah, be careful. Like my iron, just the sides have to be nice and pressed, because we're going to be stitching. We're going to be stitching the blades together. So I'll just finish up doing my points on my Dresden, my blades here. Isn't it amazing how lovely that turned out? Just a nice finished edge. And sometimes with a Dresden plate, if you have a rounded edge, you have to maybe satin stitch it. Obviously, you're going to do whatever applique method that you're comfortable with. I'm going to just be doing my blanket stitch again, probably with a variegated thread, but I'll be showing you that. So I'm going to finish up my blades, which are all pretty perfect, and then I'll show you the next step. Points all of my blades together, and I don't know if it's going to work out or not. I like to think I'm a bit clever, but I don't know. When I actually cut these, I think I cut 5 dark and 5 light. 5 dark and 5 light. They're not like dark and light. They just read a little bit. And so I'm thinking there might be a method to my madness. I have no idea. I'm pulling a dark green and putting it onto putting a light red onto it. That's what I've done. I've just chain stitch these pieces. Hopefully it will turn out, because we need all of the blades to go around. So hopefully this will turn out. I think it will. If not, I have to do some unpicking. So anyway, I'm just going to, what you're going to be doing is I've just started chaining these. You're going to be taking your 2 blades, whatever colorways they may be. Oh, just as an aside, you know me and my asides, this would make up beautiful in a scrappy quilt. Literally, if you have like a pastel shades or even bold colors, just at 20 different fabrics that coordinate, that you like. And look how quick it does. It's really quite easy. We've stitched these. Look how perfectly they've been stitched. They've been cut perfectly, and they've been stitched precisely. Now I'm just going to stitch from the top point. You must get this top point perfectly together. Doesn't really matter about this bottom point. Even if this gets a little bit screwed up, we're putting that big circle on it. So sometimes the bottom doesn't work. But that's why you always see a Dresden plate with a circle in it, because the bottom, even though they're cut exact. So we're just going to put those 2 top pieces together under the presser foot. The needle goes down. I'm just chaining 1/4 inch right along, having matched the edges, right sides together of my prints. and as I'm alternating, so this is alternating. There's my 1/4" seam. I'm using like a tan thread in piecing these. So I'm going to take a light green and a dark red. As you can see, I'm keeping for this. I hope it works out okay. I don't know. I'm putting the green on the bottom, so hopefully we'll be you know, red green, red green, red green. Lining up the edges, 1/4" right along the crescent foot there, and right down to the end. My dark green, and because I've pretty much pressed these and sewn them nicely together, it's this point here that you want to make sure they're nice and even. And then my right sides together, and I'm just going to finish up chaining my, so we'll have 10 units of 2, and then I'll show you how we address that. So I've finished sewing my 2s together, and what I'm doing is I'm just grabbing the red. You know, there's no rhyme or reason to what I'm doing. Well, maybe, but like whatever. You just have to press these. You set your seam, and then what I'm doing is I'm rolling my iron so that all of the seams go the same way. And on this configuration of the red green, all my seams are going one way, as you can see. Now, because I think, I remember I did the dark, light, light, dark, maybe it's going to work out. I don't know. So I'm setting my seam real well. I think it's really important about the ironing. Oh, you know me. So this is real nice. This is a finished edge. I've really pressed them. I've just made my pile. If you're doing it scrappy, by all means, just, you know, just press these open. Really nice. That just rolls right over there. And we have these units of 2. Basically, all I'm going to be doing is I'll be showing you that I'm just going to be starting to sew these units of 2 together. And then we go around. And as I've pressed all my seams, all of the seams, it's fairly important. I don't know why. Why is it important? Yeah, it's important, I guess, that the seams all go the same way in order for the Dresden plate to lay properly. So what I'm going to do, is it going to work? I'm going to do a dark, and then a light, and then a dark. I don't know. To my mind, it might look nice. Oh, yeah, it looks nice. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go back and do the exact same thing. I'm going to do the exact same thing, sewing right sides together on this blade. So I'm just going to pull here. I have my green. I'm just going to stitch down there, and then I'll bring it back to the machine. I'll bring it back and I'll show you what we have.